to start that journey of forgiving the other person, you have to be able to forgive yourself. Now, there was a problem. I felt that what I had said was completely unforgivable. And at the time, that was like what I like. There is no way a human being could ever, like, I need to lash myself for the rest of my life for this, because it was awful.
Psychedelics are said to shift our fixed perspectives, giving us a bird's eye view of our own lives and helping to remove the lenses of cultural, religious, and social conditioning through which we are taught to see the world. They are being used therapeutically and somatically to treat depression, addiction, PTSD, and trauma, and many are using them to explore the ineffable, those unknown realms of consciousness and beyond. Join us in Adventures of the Psyche as we learn how psychedelics have transformed people's lives. Hello, friends. Welcome to Adventures of the Psyche. Today we are joined by Tom Hatsis, who shares how mushrooms helped him become conscious of the space between reaction and chosen response, enabling him to rewire old defense mechanisms and approach difficult situations in a whole new way. Tom Hatsis is a speaker and author who's written 4 books, 3 dealing with psychedelic history and 1 on practical psychedelic magic, along with several articles for PsyPress UK and the Journal of Psychedelic Studies. He's appeared on GaiamTV shows Psychedelica, Open Minds with Regina Meredith, and Beyond Belief with George Noory. He co-runs Psanctum Psychedelia, a psychedelics education and harm reduction organization, and curates the Psanctum Psychedelic Library.
Growing up the way I did in New York, with a pretty traditional upbringing, kind of old world upbringing, was harsh. It was pretty harsh. And I'm certain that a lot of people have felt that way, and in different places, all over the world. And one of the things, though, about New York, when you're raised in kind of a harsh household with an outer harsh environment, there's never any escape, because you're in that harsh environment and you feel like, okay, I could go home and things will be less hard. No, they're not. So there's never that escape. You're yelled at outside, then you're yelled at inside. And over time, and I'm not a psychologist by any means, what I would imagine that does to a person is make them very, very, very defensive and almost see everything as a potential threat. When you're, beat up in school for being homosexual, and then you go home and you get smacked across the head and you're told, well, don't be gay, where do you go from there? There's no place to go. So you develop these very strong defenses, and you put up a lot of walls around everything. And mostly not around other things, but around yourself. You put up a lot of walls. There's also a moat, I think about 2 or 3 moats actually with me, a whole bunch of crocodiles. And somehow, even though it's fresh water, I got some sharks in there too. Don't know how, but freshwater shark, whatever, maybe it's a thing. So the end result of that is that, when somebody kind of pokes you a little bit, you tend to get like, oh my goodness, I need to like armors up, archers to the towers, infantry, get your sword sharpened, that's, over years of that kind of environment, living in that kind of environment, that's what's going to happen. And unfortunately, it started to manifest in ways where it's like somebody says something and it's like, you should just walk away from it, because who really cares at the end of the day? But as someone who was bullied and made fun of mercilessly as a kid, I can't stand people bullying anybody. Like it drives me crazy. And as we all know, these days, if somebody happens to be a straight white dude, you are totally allowed to bully that person. I mean, totally socially acceptable. And there was this person who was doing that quite a bit, and dropping all the dog whistle terms, calling people Nazis, and I'm apparently a Nazi and a white supremacist, and all this bullshit that isn't true. And it really got to me, and I reacted, not intelligently, but definitely a reaction, and said something. Unfortunately, I'm a writer, and as an author, I know how to construct a sentence that can make you feel really good or can absolutely destroy you. And again, being an author, I was drinking a little too much at the time. It's been known to happen. And so I was a little tipsy, and I was a little pissed off by this. And I was tired of this person who I had experienced kind of being a bully before. And so I said something really, really, really regrettable, that it was the kind of thing where I read it like not 10 minutes after. I was like, dude, how the fuck did you say that to somebody? Like, what, how did you? And that's where I got to the point where it's like, how did this person and myself, like, how did we get to this point? Now, I can't speak for this other person because I'm not that other person. I don't know all the experiences and drives and motivations, whatever brought that person to that moment, but I can at least figure it out for myself. And mushrooms have always been my go-to for these kinds of questions. And so I took a series of mushroom deep dives to kind of figure out how it was that I at least got to that point where I was just saying some really nasty things to somebody, provoked or otherwise. And I think that was the big lesson. In fact, I know that that was the big lesson of these mushroom experiences, because it was like, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much somebody pokes you or provokes you or calls you nasty, untrue names. You cannot be that shitty of a person back, because you're just showing that they're right. I mean, not about being a white supremacist, but maybe about being an asshole. So it's just this idea that, again, to say that chasm opened up, and for lack of a better way of putting it, for all you people out there that are not into the more spiritual side of things, when I eat mushrooms, I believe I am in communion with Gaia. That is my altar to Gaia behind me. Sorry if that makes anybody upset, but I was talking to Gaia, and she was like, well, look, you actually have all of this space. You see how far that space is between the, the initial, whatever, and the reaction. And it was like, wow, like I thought that was like only like a millisecond. She's like, no, look at how much time there is. Look at all that. And so I spent some time, a lot of time, in what is I refer to as the forgiveness room in Gaia's Palace. I was also reading a friend and colleague's book at the time. My friend is Anna Hollop. She wrote Forgive and Be Free. And one of the takeaways through all this work is you actually have to be able to forgive yourself as much as the other person, or at least to start that journey of forgiving the other person, you have to be able to forgive yourself. Now, there was a problem. I felt that what I had said was completely unforgivable. And at the time, that was like what I like. There is no way a human being could ever, like, I need to lash myself for the rest of my life for this, because it was awful. It was like, fuck, like I'm thinking about it now, like, Jesus Christ, how the fuck? Anyway, anyway, the point I'm getting is I did, through the mushrooms, learn how to not only forgive myself, but also I reached out to this person and said, look, I would like to apologize to you. Can we please talk this out? Can we please find some kind of reconciliation? Because this is eating me alive right now. Like, I don't like that this happened. And in the end, I'm actually glad it did, because we talked, we both apologized, and I actually found things about this person that I genuinely like and appreciate. And that would not have happened otherwise had I not eaten all those mushrooms, gone through that work, thought about this concept of forgiveness and how to borrow from my friend's book title, how truly freeing it can be if it's real, if you mean it. If you don't mean it, it's not going to do anything for you. But if you do mean it and you really like look at something that you've done and you say, gee, fuck, how did I do that? Mushrooms might be right for you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing. I can relate to a lot of that story. So, and one of my favorite quotes is, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives and we'll call it fate, to paraphrase Carl Jung. So I'm curious, were you aware of these dynamics that you were working with, to the degree and where they came from? Did you have an understanding of that before this particular incident?
Not really. It was really, I mean, this incident was really the springboard for me to take, a long look at myself and figure all this stuff out. So I'm actually very much in debt to this person. She kind of saved my life. So
Saved your life. Why saved your life?
because the encounter forced me to look deep at myself and dig up where these issues are coming from. And I mean, I might still not have made that realization to this day if this angel hadn't come along and whispered in my ear some really mean things. But it's, again, I really am happy that it happened.
Yeah. Okay. And it's interesting. I was also bullied and then turned around. Like, I was bullied for a good year, a couple years in like middle school. And then I turned around in high school and I bullied someone else, and it took me years later to recognize and feel bad and try to find that girl on the internet and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm an asshole. Um, I'm curious you mentioned how hard it was for you after the fact, that you realized that you were really ashamed, it sounds like. What exactly about the dynamic led you to being so ashamed, and how did the mushrooms help you understand this better?
Sure. It was really harsh and really shameful on two levels. There were, first of all, the words that were used, which were designed to cut deep. But there was also a very strong level of hypocrisy in the words I used, because I felt she was attacking me and some friends of mine based on our immutable characteristics. And what I did was I turned around like a total hypocrite and attacked her immutable characteristics. Again, for no other reason than to just cut as deeply as I could. And I didn't realize it at the time. It was only after I had these four or so deep dives with mushrooms that I realized, dude, like, you just did the very thing that you cannot stand that people do these days. You attacked somebody based on things that they have absolutely no control over. You fucking asshole. And so it made me realize that I had to apologize to this person, that there was a lot more space between the initial conflict and my reaction, and really any reaction. And instead of just, you have, somebody says something to you, somebody harms you in some way, I realized, I don't need to run across this chasm, sword and shield in hand. I could just mosey across it, check everything out, make sure I'm interpreting everything properly, make sure I haven't misunderstood anything. And when we finally get to meet each other, I'll be a lot more relaxed. I'll be a lot more in tune with what actually happened. And yeah, the mushrooms helped me greatly with that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining, Tom.
Thanks so much for having me.